Well, Lane, it is a busy week for American agriculture here in sunny Orlando, Florida.
That's right. We're here at the 2023 Commodity Classic, where we are joining wheat growers, corn growers, sorghum growers, soybean, and of course the Association of Equipment Manufacturers for their annual meetings in that impressive Commodity Classic trade show. But a little bit different weather than where we call home back up in Montana. Probably about a 90-degree difference for some producers. But really excited about all the folks we're going to catch up with this week, whether they are producers in the countryside, our friends in agribusiness, and even agency and elected officials that help shape the policy that impacts farm country.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the big talking point here at the Commodity Classic with all the different commodity groups that Lane mentioned is, of course, the new Farm Bill.
That's right. Farm Bill, government regulations, whatever it might be. We look forward to having more of those conversations and sharing them back to you, whether that's on our social media platforms or on our radio and TV programs throughout the week. We look forward to bringing you those important updates from down here in Orlando.
Well, this week, thousands of corn, soybean, sorghum, wheat growers, and even equipment manufacturers are here in Orlando, Florida for the 2023 Commodity Classic. And one of those making the journey down here to the Sunshine State this week is Nathan Keane, the president of the Montana Grain Growers Association. Nathan, it's been fun to catch up with you as we kind of kick off Commodity Classic here in Orlando with some of the National Association of Wheat Grower meetings. Talk about what you guys are discussing this week here in Orlando and what some of the big policy items you're bringing from Big Sky Country here.
Sure. Yeah, so I just got out of the Environmental Research Committee. The talk, everything is Farm Bill. And what are some of the priorities that we're wanting to push in the Farm Bill? On the Environmental Research Committee side of things, there is a lot of money being poured into climate smart stuff. There's, outside of the Farm Bill stuff, climate smart stuff, the IRA money, so it's that Inflation Reduction Act. And so how is all this coming together? What is working? What's not? What are some of the priorities? And some of the biggest priorities, all this money dumping in NRCS, well, they're having a tough time rolling any of these things out. Just lack of staffing is a huge thing. We got to speak with the chief of NRCS in this meeting, and that is one of their priorities, is the staffing issue, because you can have the greatest programs in the world, but if you cannot enroll them due to lack of staffing, then how good is that program really? And so, yeah.
We've been talking a lot about all this climate smart technology and innovation and grants and programs. I mean, it's a huge priority of the Biden administration, obviously. You mentioned, you heard from NRCS Chief Terry Cosby here in Orlando. What does all this mean, though, for farmers on the ground like yourself? I mean, where do you even take like this 30,000-foot issue, climate smart, sustainability, whatever you want to call it, and get and implementing it?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So there's a lot of programs out there. I mean, you can go to your NRCS office and see what can work for you. But this is some of the topics that we were talking to the Chief Cosby about was, NRCS is great with these programs and what they roll out. The problem that we're facing, though, is we are so different from state to state, let alone just within the state of Montana, how different areas of Montana is. And so a lot of these cookie cutter like programs just don't tend to work. And when we're talking, these sustainability or climate smart programs, one of the biggest topics, cover crops. It's a tough one for us here in Montana because it's just lack of moisture, that the drier areas have a tough time doing these cover crop things. So I brought up the question to the chief on, can we branch out outside of that? There's a lot of technologies out there, regenerative stuff, biological things, prebiotics, probiotics, that, personally on my farm alone, been using these things for 3 years, and the benefits I've been seeing with reduction of fertilizer and reduction of chemicals, And so I brought that up to him, how can we get this incorporated, different technologies like that incorporated into programs like this? And, and he had a great answer. He's like, really, farmers tend to be 2-3 years ahead of us. They tend to know what works and what doesn't, and we need to let them know. And so get involved in your local, committees to be able to bring that to them so they can kind of work up the ladder. And so that is one good route. On the other side of things too, for NOG, we'll be pushing certain things that work for regions. And so that is one thing that we're talking about, is regional programs that work and not just cookie cutter. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned the Farm Bill, and obviously that is going to be a huge talking point amongst all the different commodity groups that are meeting this week here in Orlando. But for wheat growers, more specifically wheat growers like you from the West or from the Northern Plains, from Montana, how important is it for you guys to meet here at Commodity Classic now every year and make sure that we have a seat around that Farm Bill table with those corn, soybean, and even sorghum guys?
Absolutely. It's important. If you're not there, then you don't have a say. I mean, that's the biggest thing. You have to be there to have a say. And so there's certain priorities that we're pushing, and we can kind of come together with these corn and soybean guys on like crop insurance. I mean, that's number one priority really for us with NOG is crop insurance, keeping that, at least sustaining that where we're at from that 2018 Farm Bill into the new Farm Bill. Especially these western states, the drought that we've been facing. I mean, if it wasn't for crop insurance, we'd be toast. I mean, really, it would be a tough times. And so to be able to maintain that and educate the legislators about it, there's a lot of new people coming in, and they don't understand. Well, I see the subsidy for crop insurance. What's this all about? Well, it gives us perfect opportunity to let them know that this is very important. If it wasn't for this, then farms would be struggling, if not losing their farms, if we didn't have this. And food is a national security thing. I mean, we need to be able to feed our people, and it's a big topic. So if you're not sitting there at the table, you don't have a say. And so there's some things that we can come together with corn and soybeans to come along with. There's other things, reference price on wheat. Mm-hmm. We are so much lower than comparatively speaking than soybean and corn on their reference prices. And so, we are pushing for a higher reference price on wheat. I mean, it's really at $5.50 set right now, from the last Farm Bill. That's not even break-even price. So we need to be able to see either a reference price up, or maybe even looking into a possibly totally different program. And there's words being thrown out there of maybe a margin program out there over like ARC or PLC. And we'll be looking into that as we get more wordage on that. But with the programs that we have currently, what we have to work with, we're looking to see if we can raise that reference price.
Outside of that Farm Bill, Nathan, I mean, what are some of the other policy issues that organizations like Montana grain growers through the National Association of Wheat Growers going to be working on here in 2023?
Yeah, well, there's always so outside the Farm Bill, WOTUS is a big thing. So this current administration wants to define it in their own way, and we are, fighting against that because we just see it as a push on private property rights. It's just, and it's still in the Supreme Court. We're looking for them to come out with the actual definition, but we have this administration currently kind of pushing beyond what they should be on private property rights, and so that's a big issue that we're continue to concentrate on outside of Farm Bill. Yeah.
Just kind of wrapping things up, Nathan. I mean, maybe describe for everybody at home why it's important for state organizations like MGGA to be part of the National Association of Wheat Growers.
Yeah, well, so it is, it's very important to be at that table. It is, you know. So as Montana Grain Growers Association, we have our state level and we have our state issues that we can go to Helena. You know, this year's a legislative year, and there's plenty of bills there that we're supporting and opposing. But then on the national level, you need to have a seat there. And so with NOG, there comes a lot of power when you have multiple states coming together with unity, pushing, you know, forward a direction of where we want wheat to go nationally. And so to be able to be at that table, to sit on the board of NOG and be able to bring resolutions that made sense in our state of Montana to bring up to NOG on the national level that might make sense there as well, to be able to push it on the national level, is incredibly important. There's several resolutions, you know, that we have brought from Montana to NOG that we are able to then lobby to our senators and our congressmen to push for these things that make sense, not only for Montana, but nationally. And so to be able to have a seat at that table is extremely important. If someone isn't being an advocate for that, then it's not happening. And so to be an advocate on the state level, very important. To be able to sit on the national level, extremely important.
Absolutely. Well said. We'll leave it at that. Nathan, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Russell.
Again, we've been visiting with Nathan Keane, the president of the Montana Grain Growers Association, just one of the many leaders here in Orlando, Florida this week, taking part in the 2023 Commodity Classic. For more details about this event, you can visit commodityclassic.com, or if you want to learn more about what your dues are doing on behalf of the Montana Grain Growers Association's membership, you can jump online and visit them at mgga.org. And of course, Lane Nordland and I are going to be here all week providing a lot more coverage like this particular program with Nathan as the Commodity Classic progresses here in Orlando, Florida. Well, the 2023 Commodity Classic is officially underway here in Orlando, Florida. And helping to kick things off here in the Sunshine State was the NRCS Chief Terry Cosby, who spoke today to the National Association of Wheat Growers and, of course, their board members and leadership from across America, including from right here in Western Ag Network country. And Terry, I guess talk a little bit about what some of your key messages and discussion points were as you talked with wheat growers this morning here in Orlando.
You know, the wheat growers have been an important partner, and we've had a lot of conversations, but we talked a lot about the 2018 Farm Bill, and right now we're in the middle of getting ready to kick it off, and it started, and for this next Farm Bill. Also, we talked about some of the new investments that have been made in conservation, from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, also Inflation Reduction Act, which is IRA, and how that is going to affect conservation across the country.
Talk about and go into a little bit more depth about the important role that farmers do play on the land out there still, whether it's in forms of all the different conservation programs that are available.
You know, I'm a farmer myself, and I'm almost a fourth generation farmer from Mississippi, and you know, great stewards. You know, they want to do what's right for the land that they're producing on, because if you got to take care of it, because if you're not, it's not going to stay productive, and the bottom line is it has to stay sustainable and productive. And so farmers are on the front line. They're doing all the great things out there, and so how can we use these programs to help them sustain their farms, build resilience, and make sure it's productive for the future? And so we talked a lot about that, and we looked at how wheat and some of the other small grains can be incorporated into some of these rotations, because you know, when I first came into the agency 43 years ago, we had a lot more longer rotations, and so now how can we do this and be sustainable? You know, we talk about a lot of the drought area and some of the small grains. And so we're at NRCS just trying to figure out how do we do that and make sure farmers are able to make a living.
And how cool is it in today's agricultural industry and at the USDA, NRCS, that now we can talk about conservation programs that don't necessarily have to take the land out of production. We can keep the land working, growing more food and fiber, while still enhancing and, of course, utilizing these different conservation tools.
Yeah, we have a lot of discussions around working lands, and especially in the West. And when we start talking about drought and some of the things that are happening, you know, how do we keep the land productive? How do we do it from a soil health perspective? And so we're implementing a lot of new things and all of new technologies, and that's something that we got to continually stay on top of, is this new and developing technology, and how does that work, and how does that incorporate. And so, you know, we have a lot of our own internal standards that we work by, and so how do we make them more flexible for the end user? You know, we have a lot of things. We have conservation innovation grants, on-farm trials, where we just talked about maybe some of these folks would like to do some of these things, and we can incorporate that into what we do every day. And so it works hand in hand. As I said, producers are, you know, they're smart. They've been farming these grounds, you know, for a long time. Sometimes we learn a lot from them because they understand what it takes on the local level to get this conservation work completed.
And do you think sometimes we take for granted just the sheer resource that we have in the men and women in that local NRCS office?
Well, you know, we've come through some tough times. Pandemic and some of the things, you know, we were concerned about our employees as well as the public. So in taking care of our employees, sometimes we didn't have a lot of folks at the office, but they were there, you know, you could get in contact with them. But the other side of this is we wanted to make sure the public was safe also while we were taking care of our employees. We have a very talented workforce out there. When you look at NRCS, or you look at FSA, you look at RMA, all the folks that are in here, we have some very talented, dedicated folks. Some of them have been there for years. They really enjoy working in those small communities. They go to school, they go to church, they go to grocery store. So they all know these folks on a local level. And it works a lot better when you know the producers that you're working with. You live in the county. And so it works very well. But I will tell you, farmers are the best well-kept secret out there, and they're the best conservationists.
Hey, my last question, maybe by far my toughest question of this interview, is I understand we have a mutual friend in Dave White.
You know, Chief White, interesting guy. You know.
Oh, you're being way too kind.
And I'm gonna leave it at that. And I know Chief White was the state conservationist in Montana back a few years ago, and he became chief of this agency. And so we have a lot of discussions about being chief, and some days I'm sitting there thinking, I'm traveling this road by myself, and I'll call Dave up, and he'll say, hey, I've traveled that road, I understand. Here's some things you might think about. So he's been a great counselor for me, and it's just great having him in my corner. But, you know, every now and then you got to treat him to a little barley product, you know. But great guy.
Absolutely. Yeah, without question,
Thank you, sir.
Dave White has left a lasting impact, to say the least, on a lot of folks across America in farm and ranch country. Terry, thank you so much for being with us. Again, Terry Cosby, the NRCS Chief. We've been talking about a lot of great conservation programs and just a wealth of knowledge that the folks at the NRCS have for America's farmers and ranchers. And as he said, one of the best resources out there is still your local NRCS office.
As we continue our conversations here in Orlando, Florida during the 2023 Commodity Classic, we're also taking a few minutes to pop on over to the National Pork Forum, hosted by the National Pork Producers Council and Pork Board as well. And joining us a little ways away from Montana, but she calls Montana home, is our friend Dr. Anna Forseth. She is the Director of Animal Health at the National Pork Producers Council. And Anna, obviously, as we look at animal health, there's been a lot of headlines over the years in regards to just herd health, not only for swine, but cattle as well. But that African swine fever, that was a big topic. We're not hearing much about it right now, but it's still an issue that you and your team at the Pork Producers Council are working to address.
Yeah, absolutely. African swine fever really kind of came on our radar bigger than ever before in 2018 and has since continued to travel across parts of Europe and Asia. Another big headline was the detection of African swine fever in the Dominican Republic in 2021, which initiated a lot of preparedness efforts on the U.S. side. At the time, there still are positive cases being detected in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, which is not that far from the U.S. coastline. And so again, a lot of work being done by both the National Pork Producers Council and the National Pork Board is looking to address African swine fever and other foreign diseases and keeping them out of our borders.
Now, for our viewers that maybe are not quite familiar with African swine fever, what impact does that have on swine health, and how could that truly impact the herd here in the United States and really impact our market and foreign market access as well?
Yeah, African swine fever, along with classical swine fever and foot and mouth disease, which your cattle audience is going to be able to relate to, right, are what we consider foreign diseases and have extreme trade implications. So not only are they devastating diseases for the animal, for the welfare of the animal, but they will immediately close export markets. And so that's obviously a huge concern for both the swine industry as well as the cattle industry.
Now, obviously, the members of the pork industry are working together to have resources available, to make sure there's funding for research, and to also just make sure there's protocol in place if, in fact, this disease did make its way to the States. Let's just talk about that collaboration with producers in the countryside and the decision makers out in our nation's capital.
Yeah, no, great question. So, again, being a regulatory disease, right? No doubt that the industries are going to have to rely on, and vice versa. The government officials are going to rely on the industry as well. But everything we're doing right now is in collaboration with USDA, APHIS, and other government agencies. So.
Well, and let's just talk about that too. Just the importance, though, of surveillance,
Yes.
of education, whether that's on the state level, the county level. Let's talk maybe about some resources that are available for producers out there of all sizes about just making sure that they're following protocol and watching for anything.
Yeah, no, on the research, education, outreach side, I mean, Pork Board for the swine industry is a great resource. Over the past year, we have put in a special effort focused on ASF preparedness. And so the Pork Board website is where I would point people to first for information on things from biosecurity to certified sample collector program that has come on board recently, and several other resource opportunities for producers to learn more about how they can prepare on farm and what conversations and relationships they should be building with their state animal health official.
Well, again, just a lot of protocol and information out there for producers, just wanting to educate themselves on animal diseases and just anything impacting the U.S. swine industry. And Anna, do you have plans to make it over to Disney World or Universal, or would your kids and husband be a little?
I think they'd be bummed if they heard that Mom went to see Mickey Mouse and they weren't here. So I'll probably head home. It's warm here. I'm ready for that Montana March weather.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
Yes, Montanans, we don't do well in this humidity and the heat, especially when it was 1 degree below zero when I left home yesterday morning. But again, Dr. Anna Forseth joining us here today at the National Pork Forum here in Orlando, Florida.